Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about this big, beautiful bill and just how it's going to impact everybody. We've been told a lot of things, and the craftiness of this bill is that we're not going to really feel the impact, not really until after the midterms. But that doesn't mean we're not going to feel it immediately. But the full force will hit us after the midterms. Oh my goodness. And we're going to be talking today about Social Security. We were told that it would not be taxed. That's not true. Nothing could be further from the truth. But as we get into today's show, I've got to do a little housekeeping. Of course, I am on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, and at Santita J on X. And of course, you're meeting me. Hey, Bernadette, I know you're coming on. Robert, sweetheart, shalom to you. Much love. And of course, I'm on the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube. Thank you for coming on there and supporting the channel. Continue to like and share, like and subscribe, And of course, Facebook.com/ Santita Jackson and friends. That's the only place where I can accept my friends. I can't go to Santita Jackson. Go to Santita Jackson and friends. Well, you know what it means. June 22nd until July 23rd is the time of the Cancerian. It's my birthday month. And I celebrate everybody's birthday, everybody. But this has a special moment. It's a special moment for me. And you know what? I found out today that this man, Soraya's father, his name is Alex Lawson. But today, he's got another name. His daughter turned 7 years of age today. So we are dedicating the show to this baby and the world that we are trying to mold. Hey, everybody. Yay. I wish I had some bells and whistles. Yay. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Happy birthday. I hope you have the most magnificent of birthdays. I remember my seventh birthday 1,000 years ago. Oh, my gosh. But oh my goodness, happy birthday, sweetheart. I hope that you have the most magnificent of birthdays. And your father loves you so much. He said, hurry up, get this thing going, because it is her birthday. This is her day. This is the most important day for me. So I got to go. But he wants to talk about, I'm not kidding. I'm very serious about this. Hey, my father left a big speaking engagement to watch me walk out the door to my prom. I take this daddy thing seriously. So happy birthday, sweetheart. I hope you have the most magnificent of birthdays. And that's right. And ask your father for everything. He's going to give it to you. That's right. That one of my girlfriends gave me that advice. I was like, oh. My mother said, don't you dare. And my father said, you can whatever you want. Torn. But happy birthday to your baby. Happy birthday to your beautiful family. And her name is Farsi, yes?
Soraya, it means Pleiades, the constellation or princess in Farsi. Yep.
And so she is appropriately named.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Happy birthday, Soraya. Happy birthday, princess. Precious, precious, precious. Well, now, you know what? I feel like you've been telling us, oh boy. Is your middle name I Told You So?
No.
Oh my gosh. But you know what? So many people, and the the narrative has been so strong, and I think that the belief in the messengers has been such that a lot of people are clinging to the narrative coming out of the Trump White House and coming out of the Republican camp. And everyone, I'm not this hardcore partisan, that I don't do that. But the Republicans, for various and sundry reasons, bought into this. Even many of them who felt that this was a horrible bill, and so they got carve-outs because they knew how devastating it would be. All right. Well, we kept hearing, don't worry about it. You're not going to get tips on workers who work in the service industry. You're not going to get tips. I wonder what that means. I wonder if that means that their bosses will pay them less. But we can delve into that another day. But we've been hearing, Alex, and maybe I'm real sensitive to it because my parents are elders now. They're in their 80s. Social Security would not be taxed, which made our elders and family members just breathe a collective sigh of relief. You were like, wow, my parents, my grandparents, my loved ones are going to get just a little bit of relief. They're going to get a little bit more. And quite frankly, you don't get a lot of money from Social Security anyway. But hey, anything can help me. But it turns out that that's not the truth. What happened?
So I think it is important to recognize that in this bill, there are things that some people will be able to take advantage of, right? So there will be people who will pay less tax on their Social Security benefits. It's definitely not everyone, because only a small portion of people paid taxes on their benefits to begin with. But if you are one of those people, you do need to find out on your own, and it's not automatic, and you're going to have to take advantage of it. It really is much smaller than they're making it seem. It's also only for a few years, because the whole reason they want us talking about this Social Security tax is so that we're not talking about the $1 trillion that was cut out of Medicaid, right? And they're like, oh, well, it's only for people who aren't supposed to. Oh, garbage. $1 trillion is the largest amount that has ever in the history of the country been cut from a health system, ever. And not only it's actually, I'll have to talk to some of my nerds, but it will be the largest health policy in modern history, maybe since Medicare was created. I mean, I'm going to put it on, it's bigger. Its implications are bigger than Obamacare, where you gave because when you take $1 trillion out of Medicaid and you cause these hospital collapses all around the country, first of all, 17 million people losing their health insurance. This is basically when they were saying get rid of Obamacare. That's basically what they did. The magnitude of it is what they did. But it's a fact of the difference between when we expanded Medicaid and created the exchanges and Obamacare and gave people health care. It really changed things massively for people. But in fact, only 10% of people at any one time are interacting with the healthcare. Healthcare is not a good that you need every single day, right? Only some people need it sometimes. And oftentimes, not oftentimes, always, the majority of people don't need their healthcare, right? So does that make sense? When you gave people insurance, not everybody needed that insurance, right? So its effects were huge, but the system then grows to provide healthcare for all those people, right? It allows hospitals to exist, for example, or nursing home to exist, and without that funding, those go away. Now, that's what happens when you remove healthcare. So they didn't mean to create policy with this, right? That's something that I know this is inside baseball, but you often wonder, like, how did they do this? They didn't think of this as a healthcare bill. So they weren't paying attention to the healthcare aspects at all. They think of this as a tax handout bill, right? The majority of what the Republicans are spending their time on is this is a bill to give trillions of dollars in tax handouts to the wealthiest, the billionaires, and large corporations. Oh yeah, we're taking money as a pay for, that's what they call it in DC, from Medicaid. But they didn't have their policy, their health policy people like looking at the implications. It was just a piggy bank for them. But what it's going to do is fundamentally rewrite the way that healthcare is delivered in this country. And primarily what that means is that in rural America, there's going to be no more healthcare. There's just no more healthcare. The health systems are gone.
No, stop. because I don't want people to think that's hyperbole.
Right, I know.
I need you to explain, because like
So the
a
way
lot
it
of
is,
America is rural. I
a
mean,
ton, a
you know,
ton, a ton of America is rural. And Santita, you know this because you are, we often talk about this. In rural America, a hospital is not just where you go if you break your arm. It is where you go if you break your arm, but it's also often the largest employer in the county,
yeah.
right? It's often the largest provider of insurance in the county because it's the largest employer. And then there's all the knock-on effects as well. So there's all of the infrastructure that's set up for the operation of these hospitals. Now, when you get rid of hospitals across wide swaths of America, all of that goes away. So it's most like the deindustrialization of America when billionaires shipped those manufacturing jobs overseas and whole parts of this country died, right? Where there used to be good paying manufacturing jobs, now there's none. Well, hospitals and nursing homes, health care, and providers, those were the good paying jobs. And now those are going to go away. So what's to keep nurses in these areas? Well, they're not going to stay. They're going to leave. And then you're going to have a fundamental reorganization. And at the very end, the Republicans sort of realized that, it was more than a piggy bank, that they were causing tremendous upheaval. Because the hospital associations, the providers, right, they all went to them and were like, guys, this is, like whole states. West Virginia's hospital association came out against the bill because they were like, we won't have any hospitals anymore if you're not in a population center. So that is going to be a fundamentally new thing. But we do know generally what it looks like, right? So when that happens, it's not like, other doctors are going to flow into these areas to like pick up the slack because it's not profitable for that to happen. So there's just going to be people who don't have access to healthcare. That's the world that we went back to. If you just take $1 trillion out of the system, that's obviously what's going to happen. 17 million people lose healthcare. And Santita, you know this, the starting point wasn't good to begin with, right? We were already in rural America. Ask people right now if they have, access to good quality healthcare. And you'll find there's huge parts of this country that currently the hospitals are closing. There's one district in Wisconsin around Eau Claire. It's represented by Representative Derek Van Orden. And he's the guy who tweeted out yes about cutting $1 trillion from Medicaid. I don't know if you saw that one, yeah, right? But he's celebrating it. In his district, the two hospitals in his district have already closed. They've already closed. There was like a hollowed out sort of version of a hospital that was just there basically to like, out of the goodness of people's hearts to keep providing some level of care. But now that's gone, right? Because
where do his constituents go?
I mean, are they supposed to drive down to Milwaukee? I think it's about 3 hours away. There might have to cross over into Minnesota. Basically health infrastructure is going to be focused in population centers. And I want to say, so like if you're living in a population center in a city or a suburb or an exurb, and you're like, oh, well, then I'm fine. You're not fine.
No, you're not fine.
You're not fine.
Alex, we're number one in maternal mortality for white and Black women. Absolutely. In the industrialized world, and Asian women, and Indigenous women are below all of us, and Hispanic women. I mean, it's like, what did James Carville call it? A massive extinction event?
And you are bringing up, I mean, I know you know this, but the first thing to go. So let's say your hospital doesn't close. They're able to create that thing that I called the hollowed out version. The first thing to go is the maternity ward. because birth is extraordinarily expensive and carries great risk. So it is necessary for Medicaid to be there to support some of that risk. Medicaid is, in large part, it's a system that supports new babies and mothers, right? It's actually, that's like a huge part of what Medicare does, is pays for births. So when you cut $1 trillion out of it, the first thing to go is maternity wards. And we're already have the worst maternal mortality in the industrialized world. So that gets worse. People will die. But even if we're looking at like, okay, well, now someone has to drive 3 hours to find the next nearest hospital or provider. Well, if you're the next nearest hospital or provider, yes, your hospital is still there, but yes, it's now going to have all those other people coming in and drawing on the services which are already under-resourced, right? So everybody's quality of care goes down. I want people
like
to
COVID on steroids.
Like COVID on steroids.
I mean, because the hospitals were overwhelmed. I mean, look, we got 350 million people. We don't even have 1 million hospital beds, so we're already. I don't understand that. You need to make that math work for me. That math ain't mathing. I don't know how you don't have 1 million beds in the United States of America with 350 million people. I mean, that's crazy.
And health. So there's two things that you have to do as a policy person. You have to always be like, well, it's very complex. And the amount of times I've said that, and it's true, because there's all these policies that they affect each other, right? So like one policy can be terrible, and then another policy is terrible, but then you mix the two of them together and it's catastrophic, right? And that's what you're seeing with like the mixture of the loss of skilled nursing facilities, which we generally call nursing homes, and hospitals. Those two together are going to be catastrophic. But at the same time, you also want to, as a policy person, be like, policy is also very simple. So if you have a system and you just remove $1 trillion from it, everything gets worse, right? Like it's just that simple. Was there a system that provided healthcare for people? Yes. And then what happens if you remove $1 trillion from it? 17 million people get less healthcare, and everyone's quality of care goes down. So even if you're lucky that you don't lose your healthcare, because 17 million other people did, that affects the quality of your care. And don't even get into the future, because doctors and nurses, and it's already a very difficult system to provide care in. The moral hazard that nurses and doctors face because of insurance companies denying people care, right? Like doctors don't get into doctoring to do paperwork to argue with an insurance company about saving their patients' lives, right? Now, Medicaid was always a system that at the very least you could count on, right? It was there. But now doctors and nurses are going to have patients that just have nothing. And they're going to have to face that difficulty. So hospitals will, as always, pick up some amount of that. It's called uncompensated care. But that will lower the quality of all care in a hospital as well. But at some point, you're talking, people are going to die. It's not like, that's not hyperbole. Yale did a study and they modeled it out. And, this is how policy works. We generally know what happens when you do things. And they have over 50,000 people a year dying from now on because of this, right? So if you remove 17 million people's healthcare, then 50,000 people a year who previously would have been alive are now going to be dead. And if you're lucky enough that you're not one who's killed by this policy, you will be harmed by this policy. And if you're lucky enough to not be directly harmed by this policy, it's going to affect someone in your life. And so I hate being this person, Santita, who has to go around and tell people just how bad it will be. And I also want to say one thing. Yes, they tried to hide the effects after the midterms. You know, that's what they always do, like pass a bill to punch everyone in the face. But they're like, we'll do it after we ask for your vote. But the magnitude here is so large, you're going to start feeling consequences immediately. There's going to, like, if you're a hospital system or private equity who won enormously, if you want to see the cowardice of Donald Trump, how many, you know, list some of his promises, right? He's not going to cut Social Security. He cut it. He cut Social Security. He's not going to cut Medicaid. He cut it. He did it. He's not going to cut Medicare. He did it. He cut Medicare. He's going to release the Epstein files. He didn't do it. He's a liar. He also said he was going to get rid of the carried interest loophole that benefits just billionaire private equity people. He caved. He didn't do it. So private equity is going to win on the one hand, but they're going to start exiting the hospital systems as quickly as possible because they've created a hot potato. An industry is collapsing. No one is going to want to wait around for the collapse itself. So we're going to be seeing these effects immediately.
But that's why I think we also, as we look at President Trump, we have to look at, you know, the Wizard of Oz I love. And Dorothy kept hearing about this wizard, and she thought he was going to be this big guy who was as big as the tower. And then when you pull back the curtain, you saw he was this little guy who was frightened to death. We're not looking at the people who President Obama said, I'm the one who's standing between you and the pitchforks, guys, even though they had paid for him to get there, quite frankly. Let's keep it 100, because that's how it works to get into the presidency. You don't just walk up in there. We've got to look at these corporations that have been pushing these policies, Alex, because they're the wizards behind the curtain. They're the ones pulling these levers, and they're going to drop everything and let everybody die while they make all this money, because that's what they're doing. I mean, these are people who say that there are too many people in the world. I heard Ted Turner say it. You know, well, the problem is, you know, you got like, we're moving, you know, we need about 2 billion people on Earth. There are 8 billion people here. So what are you all talking about? I mean, these are things that these folks talk about in our faces all the time. And I'm not a conspiracist. I'm just listening to what people say. Maya Angelou said, hey, when people tell you who they are, you better believe them. And everything that they're doing, Soraya won't make it. I mean, she won't. She'll make it. But what I'm saying is, the world will be depopulated. I'm afraid of the world that she's entering into. Because
that's why I fight as hard as I do. I refuse to let these fascists create that world, and everything that is done by the hands of, you know, these are just people. You cut into any system and you see just people. We can reverse everything, and we have to always remember that we're building a future that I will be proud to hand off to my children, because you are correct. The alternative is a world that will chew people up and spit them out so that a handful of billionaires can, you know, have another golden yacht and do whatever they do, go Burning Man or whatnot.
And they're serfs.
Well, that's what they want. Exactly. They want a giant domestic labor pool of impoverished people who are scrambling to survive so that they can control them and that they can do whatever they want. And, you know, the truth is that they have won an enormous round here. Enormous. And I don't think that people still understand the enormity of what has happened. And that word has a negative connotation built into it. That's Absolutely. What it means. It is a cataclysmic thing that has happened. And the reason, we've talked about this before, the reason that people sometimes have a hard time with this concept is because we've been fighting against this for so long and we've won. We've always won,
Mhm.
right? They've tried to do things, and then we fight back and we win. We did not win. We lost. We lost this time. First time that we've ever lost when they've tried taking healthcare away at this magnitude. Quibbling around the edges, yes, but nothing of this magnitude. And so that's why people are not, it makes sense that people don't understand what's coming, because it's never happened before. But what I do know as well is that the rage that people will have, we need to grab that and point it at Donald Trump, at the Republicans, at the rising authoritarian fascism, and say, this is what they did. The future that they believe in does not include you. And so unless you're a billionaire, you better join forces here and fight back. And,
we have to name names and look at the corporations. One of the things that Reverend Jackson started to do about 20 odd years ago was buy stock in corporations, which gave him the right to go to board meetings. Just as we found out just after October 7th, as tragic as that date was, but then the tragedy has just mushroomed, right? You had the military contractors who they were caught on one of their meetings, their board meetings, and they said, as sad as this moment is, we're about to make a lot of money. We've got to call these corporations out.
The private prisons, Santita. What about them right now?
All of them. I'm saying we've got to look at President Trump, no question, but they're the people who are behind him. And if we don't start boycotting these corporations and calling them out, I mean, these are the people who are blacklisting these students. Representative Ilhan Omar's daughter, who just came out of Barnard College, the young woman who had been kicked out of her dorm because she was not anti-Israel. Nothing could have been further from the point. She's anti-genocide. She's 22, a Barnard graduate, obviously a very bright young lady. She can't get a job. She's selling her clothes online. Now, I know she's resourceful enough. She'll be able to figure it out. But kids like her have been blacklisted. We've got to call these people out, Alex, because they're the ones who are, they've taken $1 trillion out of our health care. That's $1 million, everybody. You know what $1 trillion is, everybody? That's 1 million times 1 million. Most of us lose our minds if we even think that we get close to $1 million in a lotto. Can you imagine 1 million times 1 million? Alex.
And the truth is, most people can't imagine it. And that's the part of the problem is, all of this stuff sort of sounds made up in a way, a billion, trillion, but it's not, right? That's the thing that we have to remember. These corporations are making out just like bandits, right? And that is who's winning. So like you read the financial press and they talk about the winners and losers from this bill. And there are winners and losers, but across the board, if you're a billionaire, you win more than you lose. If you are not a billionaire, you lose more than you win. I think that we need to focus on both Trump and the Steve Bannon, the white nationalist, authoritarian, plus the Silicon Valley, dark enlightenment stuff, and electoral power. And that's part of it. And we have to do that because we still do have a voice. So we have to express our power through our elected process, our electoral process, like Representative Miller Meeks in Iowa, right? She's Iowa's first congressional district. She won by 800 votes. 67,000 people lose their health care in her district, right? She's gone, right? You can't withstand that. Now, she has a war chest by these corporations. She's got $2 million in her war chest. So she's going to try to hang on, but we have to defeat all of them. And there's about 30 of them who are in that situation. But as you're saying, we also have to look at the wizards behind the curtain. We have to understand that the billionaires are driving the bus. Right now, Donald Trump is a billionaire, and it's a government of billionaires. And then he sat all the billionaires right behind him at his inauguration. He wasn't hiding who this government is for. It's for the billionaires.
And
that's
they
who's
chose
driving
to
it.
be there. Alex, these people never come out. They don't. They don't want to be seen. You know that. It's like it was a run. You know, you have a run on the banks when the bank is about to go belly up. It's like there was a run on the government. I mean, I've never seen this many publicly wealthy people. Publicly wealthy, because there are people who are even wealthier than these people who we saw. I've never seen this many people who are this active. Larry Ellison, you know, Oracle, all these people who are really at the front of policy. I'm like, what are you guys doing? What is going on here? And then when I listen to talk shows, and people still believe that this criticism as we're making the critique of this law, it's not a bill anymore. It's been signed into law.
Yep.
As we engage in critique, we're picking on the president. I'm like, no, wait a minute. We're trying to save you and ourselves. How can I be picking on him? And what is it? I'm trying to figure out why the message, what is missing, the messaging. Because I'm not hearing in corporate media, they're not telling you that no, none of these reporters are confronting the president or anyone else about the untruth, about taxing Social Security. No, it's like no one's saying no. We have it right here. They're going to be taxed. What is your comment? No one wants to say anything. It's like people are afraid of this 25-year-old who's a press secretary. Now she's tough and all of that, but I'd be tougher because that's what the press is supposed to do, but that's not what they're doing at all.
Couldn't agree with you more there. I mean, I personally went and interviewed Representative Miller Meeks. It was not all that hard. I asked her the question, you know, what about all the hospitals that are going to close in your district? And she ran away from me and then sitting there hitting the elevator button as quickly as possible. It's not hard to get these questions to people. You know, my colleague just caught up to Ted Cruz in the hallways of the Senate and, you know, asked him a tough question that he had to dodge because they have no answers for it. The corporate media that's not what they're going to do. They're owned by the corporations who benefit from this bill, right? There's 7 corporations that control basically everything that you see. And so, yeah, they're not going to tell you the truth about this. They want this to happen. But even in the face of that, this bill is deeply unpopular and the Republican agenda is deeply unpopular, which is why we have to be so concerned, because Donald Trump also put $100 billion to create an internal Stasi secret police force, right? They cover their faces before they take away people's freedom without due process, right? Let's not look away from what's going on. So as they're stealing our health and our wealth and our well-being and our liberty, they're also creating a force to try to quash dissent with. And that's where we are in this fight. So people need to understand those stakes, which is why we have to fight on every front, you know, electoral, yes, but also mass mobilization, things like no kings and hands off, and there will be more. Getting into the streets is the ultimate demonstration of power, and fascists cannot take over a country if the people are in mass standing against them. That's just a fact, which is why they try to use fear to cow people so that they're cowering and not fighting back. We have to show people the bravery and how good it feels to fight for a future that we can be proud of for our children. And the American people are generally there. There's still a decency trap where the vast majority of the American people are generally decent people.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so they have a hard time understanding the deep immorality that comes from the billionaire crowd, right? They're like, no, I don't think that they'd really kill us for money. And you're like, oh, they will. That's what health insurance does on the regular, is deny people who need it care. And they're still going to be in charge of what's left of the healthcare system, right? We just removed Medicaid, which was a check on the greed of the health insurers. So we are at a really, really important point for America, for this country. Is this country going to have a future? Is it going to have a future as America, or is it going to become something totally different? Something where if you're not related to Donald Trump or willing to, kneel before him, then you don't get anything. And lots of world history is actually, the vast majority of world history is made up where the states and the polities are set up exactly like that, right? Our experiment is, what if we have a nation that listens to the will of the people? And it's never been perfect, but we've always been walking in the direction of making it better and better and better. Now, because of Donald Trump and the Republicans and the billionaires, we're sprinting in the other direction. We're sprinting away from listening to the will of the people, and it's really the whims of the person. That's where policy is being made right now. This guy comes up with, I'm going to put a 50% tariff on copper. Why? Just because he thought of it. How do we have any faith in that system that this guy's not going to sell us out for personal profit every single chance he gets? We can't, which is why we can't allow this system to really take root, and we need to excise it, defeat it, and make sure that it can never come back. That's the mission before us.
Absolutely. We're talking with Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. And Social Security has worked until it has been unplugged. And that's what's happening right now. It's being unplugged. Your health care is being unplugged. Your ability to pay for college or graduate school, unplugged. If you are not wealthy and or privileged, you have no upward mobility in the society as these people have structured it. I mean, and I keep going back to the corporations, Alex, because I see Bill Ackman, who worked to break the back of DEI, who has worked to block the employment of people who've come out of college and law school and graduate school if they exercised their First Amendment rights peacefully to end a genocide that our tax dollars are paying for. I'm looking at these people and I don't want to look past them because they're the ball shot callers. Donald Trump didn't pick J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel did. So we need to ask someone who, when they ask him if people are still going to exist, and he gets a blank look and he cannot readily answer the question. I want to know who this guy is. He is from Southern Africa. He's from apartheid Southern Africa. I want to know who he is. I want to know when he got to Stanford why he was saying that apartheid ain't that bad. It actually did work. I think we need to dig down. We need to find out who Elon Musk, who are these people? Who are these people who are AIing people out of their jobs? Whenever you call someplace, now do you know that there is a band that has charted that is an AI band? They even have an AI generated photograph of this band. They got a great song too. So they took the elements of the greats and they come up with a song. Who does this? So, I mean, and we're looking at the midterms, okay? Because I think that we've got some dates certain that we're looking at. But as we're looking at the midterms, I'm concerned about what's going to happen in the short term because these cuts are here. Now we're about
Absolutely.
to feel them. So, I mean, what do we do? Because I repeat, the cuts, if you haven't felt them yet, they're coming, everybody. It's been signed. This is not a bill anymore. It's law. It was signed. So this stuff, and these people have laid the foundation. They put the mechanism, more than a foundation, they put the mechanism in place to enact the law. So what do we do?
I mean, the only thing we can do is fight back. I want to lay out a few more of the things. I mean, you say Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. You have to say the name Palantir when you talk about that. So this is a company,
and Alex Karp, who's head of Palantir.
And this is their thing. This is what they do. Palantir is given these massive government contracts with the security apparatus to monitor, to surveil all of us, and to come up with models that they feed to the security apparatus on who is dangerous and who is not. And they've done this all over the world, right? So they do it here in the US, but Google what they've done for autocratic regimes around the world, because in other countries, they also feed them who has the wrong thoughts, who are the people who are dissidents, who are the journalists who are telling the truth, and they sell that to the highest bidder, who is the autocratic regime, right? They are a tool of repression. And that is who is getting enormous amounts of money and power in this Trump regime. And, you know, when Doge, this entity Doge, has access to all of our Social Security data, what are they doing with it? I tell you what they're doing with it. They're feeding it into these giant databases for targeting and surveillance purposes, so that the autocrats and the security apparatus, which also just got $100 billion, so they can buy tanks and guns, has as much information about us as possible, so that they can repress people who they don't want, being heard, and that's what we're fighting against. So the stakes are inordinately high, and I will, there's all of the bad, and when you lose, it's important to actually recognize the magnitude of it, but also remember that we have a lot of infrastructure that is still ours in the United States, and we have to use that to our advantage. It's true that one of the biggest things that Donald Trump 2.0 has that he didn't have in 1.0 is the Supreme Court, who are handing him executive power as quickly as possible. And so we have to just add that to the list. The Supreme Court is not the controllers of our lives, and so we can't allow them to be. We need to actually take on the Supreme Court. The fact that the billionaires have bought Clarence Thomas, right? Like, we don't allow the Supreme Court to just operate in this way where they can, sell us to billionaires and sell their decisions to billionaires. We still have a tremendous amount of power, and we have to utilize that in all of the ways. So electorally, defeating Republicans in the midterm, building towards the presidential, remembering that Donald Trump is, he's a lame duck. He's on his way out. He's not going to have another term.
But who will have another term? Palantir,
right? They're going to try.
These people, that's why I keep the people I'm looking at, the folks who aren't leaving. Presidents go in, they go out. But the people who stay in the background, that I'm telling you, it's the people behind the curtains. And I'm concerned about them, because to me, they're the ones who are dictating the policy. He's the actor, he's the spokesman, he's the salesman, right? He's the pitch guy. But these people whose names we don't know, they're the ones who are all over him. I mean, and I'm not saying that they like him either, right? I mean, this was the guy who could sell who could sell to the public what they needed to get done. Because at the end of the day, like you said, we're the ones with the power, Alex. We're the people. If people decided to sit in on Washington and not move until not just the cuts restored, because I want you to speak to Chaparral. Chaparral said, what can we do? I want you to speak to that because you keep going back to people power. The bill has passed. And frankly, even if the Democrats regain power, I'm still not confident, she said, that they will restore the cuts. What say you?
I mean, we have to do way more than restore the cuts, too. So there's nothing that you can say. Like, I can't predict the future. We had to fight enormously hard to get a similar size amount of money in Build Back Better to do some good things. We would have to get $1 trillion passed just to get back to zero. So yeah,
a system that was not as strong as we needed it to be in the first place.
Exactly. So it has to be way more. But I mean, it also, some of the good news is getting rid of the Trump tax cuts, because they cut $1 trillion out of Medicaid and they blew, trillions of dollars in debt. So they blew a giant hole in the budget because the tax handouts were so enormous. So we have to take that back, have billionaires pay their fair share. Just like in Social Security, if billionaires pay the same rate as everyone else, we can just expand benefits for everyone. So we have to not think of it as just getting back to where we were. And so I think that we need to have a much more expansive view of what is necessary. We need to take power, and then we need to reverse all of the things that have happened and then build a system that prevents that from happening again. So in the collapse of the Great Depression, when the New Deal was created and Francis Perkins and the New Dealers created Social Security and these other systems, it was not only to address the emergency that was happening right then, it did, but it also created a system that prevented those emergencies from happening again. And that's what we need to do. So we need massive system-wide changes. For example, we can't just put $1 trillion back into Medicaid. We need to finally guarantee healthcare for every single person in this country and get rid of the profit motive entirely from healthcare, right? Because if you leave it in, then these ghouls will just fund another thing to steal money, to rip healthcare away from people for profit. So we need to think about that across the board in every aspect of our lives. How do we create a system that not only reverses what just happened, but reverses the 40 years of this Reagan, Thatcher, neoliberal failed experiment where we just gave everything to the billionaires and everyone else is left with nothing. We need to fundamentally restructure our society so that people are benefiting, not billionaires.
Well, I have about 4 or 5 minutes left here. And Reagan, I mean, because so much of this really accelerated under him, right? And again, another salesman, a great salesman who was sponsored by corporate America.
Absolutely.
And I think we've got to look at Reagan. You got to look at, you have to look at Trump, no question. But we've got to look at all of these players around him because they're the people who are not going to leave. Mm-hmm. They're the people who will put on another guise and be behind a Democrat and we'll have the same problem. Because like you said, we need a fundamental restructuring of the society, which is Dr. King talked about 60 years ago. I mean, he said that if we continue to feed this military industrial complex and starve, social programs, we are headed towards spiritual death. And here we are. Here we are. I mean, and in Soraya's name, on her 7th birthday, I can't help but think about that baby because I want the right world for her. You know, I've got nieces and nephews, and my nephew was running down the street, and he is like 6'1", 6'2", really handsome. And he was in high school at the time. No, he was in college. Gangly, you know, tall, thick, but he played soccer, so just really lit, swimmer and all of that. And he came around the corner because my brother, two of my brothers and my parents literally live a door and 2 and 3 away from each other. So he had just been over visiting with his cousins, and he saw, when he turned the corner, he saw my mother and I getting out of the car in their driveway, in my parents' driveway. And he was like, "Grandma, Auntie." And he runs down the street. Now, it's a nice neighborhood, right? It is a nice neighborhood. But the police drive through all the time just because it's one of the neighborhoods that they safeguard. I ran out in the middle of the street and screamed, "Stop. Do not run." I didn't say it in that tone of voice. Something in me, it was primal, Alex, because I was afraid that I was looking at another Trayvon in his neighborhood, and he's running down the street. I don't want that world for him. I don't want that world for your daughter. I want a world where if you get sick, you shouldn't go broke, or you shouldn't die. I don't think that getting pregnant should be a death sentence for a woman. I mean, I don't think that. I think that the elderly, after they've given their time to us, they shouldn't be working in the fast food restaurants at 65.
How about a world with diplomacy and peace instead of imperialism and war, right? I mean, the
Right.
vision for the world that we're building is not difficult. It's racial, social, environmental justice, reverse the upward redistribution of wealth, and ensure that we have a world based on diplomacy and peace and not imperialism and war. And economic justice right in the heart of all of it. Because if you allow the billionaires, the few, to have all of the money, then almost makes it impossible to achieve anything else, because the billionaires are making their money off of war. The billionaires are making their money off of denying healthcare. The billionaires are making their money off of structural racism and sexism. The billionaires are making their money off of environmental degradation, right, and exploitation. That's how they're making their money. So if we don't reverse an economy that, if we don't create an economy that works for people and not for billionaires, then we can't create this beautiful future. But also, there's not that many billionaires. So it just requires the people waking up, standing together, the scales falling from some people's eyes, and seeing this is not possible. We can't have a beloved community where we have some people with a fascist boot on their neck, right? If you're not fighting against the boot on somebody else's neck, you can't be surprised when it ends on yours. It's inevitable every time. And so the only good thing I'll say about these goons and weirdos that are in power right now is that it is full mask off. They're pretending like they have all the power. They don't. But they are telling us exactly who they are. And you already gave the quote. Believe them. Believe them. Believe when they tell you that who they are people who will steal healthcare from 17 million people. 50,000 people die a year, steal the food off of the plates of the hungry in order to give trillions in tax handouts to billionaires, and then have the audacity to call themselves Christians, which I probably, I'll get in trouble for saying that, but nothing is crazier to me than that you'll have Ted Cruz talking to my colleague today about what he's doing, and his response was God bless. God bless. That is the way that he got out of having to answer. If you've read even a smidgen of the Bible, or generally any holy book, you'll find that the message that resonates throughout all of them is that you take care of the powerless, you take care of the least among us, you take care of the poor, the downtrodden, the hungry. And a society that preys on the poor and the hungry and the powerless will devour itself. And that's, the message that shines through in all of these books. So yes, like Speaker Johnson tries to oftentimes end with a sort of a sermon-esque thing. And this is a guy who represents a district with the highest percentage of people relying on Medicaid in the country.
Unbelievable.
He is hurting his constituents the most, and then trying to sell it as some sort of holy thing. It's immoral. It is against everything that we as a nation need to be built on.
Happy birthday, Soraya. Have a wonderful time.
Pizza party.
Pizza party. Hey, look, have some fun. Have some fun. And God bless you, Alex Lawson, for the great work that you and Social Security Works do. President Altman and my whole Linda Benesh and all my friends over there, give them my love. And coming up, we're going to be talking about ICE. You kind of touched on this. Should they have their faces covered? In American history, the KKK keep their faces covered, but not our police. The police you can identify, because they too can be held accountable, but not ICE. What do you think about that, everybody? Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show, coming up in the next hour. Back in just a moment here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.